Your future self may not regret one bad trade as much as the years you spent believing trading was the serious path to wealth. Most people think trading keeps them poor because they lose money. But that is only the visible damage. The deeper damage is what trading teaches your brain to believe: that wealth should move fast, progress should feel exciting, and doing nothing means falling behind. That belief can quietly destroy the investor you were supposed to become. This is where Ethan's story begins. Ethan was 29 years old. He had a stable job, a decent income, and $20,000 saved. He was not reckless with money. He was not spending every paycheck on things he could not afford. Compared with most of his friends, Ethan seemed responsible. He knew saving mattered. He knew investing mattered. He knew that letting money sit in a checking account forever was not a real plan. But there was one problem. The normal path felt painfully slow. Every financial article seemed to say the same thing. Invest consistently. Stay diversified. Think long-term. Ignore the noise. Let compounding work. Do not panic. Do not chase. Do not try to time the market. The advice made sense. But emotionally, it felt like waiting in line for a life he wanted now. Then trading found him. At first, it did not look dangerous. It looked intelligent. People online talked about setups, entries, exits, breakouts, risk management, price action, and discipline. They did not sound like gamblers. They sounded like people who understood something ordinary investors were too passive to see. That mattered. Because once something feels like skill, losing money no longer feels like risk. It feels like a problem you can solve with more effort. So Ethan opened a brokerage account with a promise to himself. And for a while, the story worked. His first few trades went well. A few $100s of profit felt different from a few $100s saved from a paycheck. Saving required patience. Trading gave him a result. Saving felt like saying no to life. Trading felt like taking control of it. That first win did not just increase his account. It changed the way he saw himself. He started checking the market before work, then during lunch, then after dinner, then before bed. At first, it looked like focus, but slowly it became dependence. If the market was up, Ethan's mood improved. If a trade moved against him, he carried the frustration into the rest of his day. A normal meeting at work became hard to sit through because part of his mind was still watching a candle move on a screen. Ethan still had his job. He still had his savings. He still looked responsible from the outside. But mentally, his money was no longer working for him. He was working for every price movement. The more he watched, the more he believed he understood. The more he believed he understood, the more confident he became. And the more confident he became, the more ordinary investing started to look weak. These questions sounded intelligent, but they hid a dangerous assumption. Ethan assumed that being active meant being in control. Then came the trade that changed everything. It started like many of the others. He saw a setup. The price was moving. The chart looked convincing. He had a plan. He told himself the risk was manageable. But this time, the trade moved against him. At first, he stayed calm. Small losses were part of the game. But when the loss became larger than expected, something shifted. He did not want to close it. Not because the numbers made sense, because closing it meant admitting he was wrong. So he waited. Then he adjusted. Then he looked for reasons the trade might recover. He found comments online from people who agreed with his original idea. He watched the chart more closely, as if attention could change the outcome. The loss grew. And by the time he finally exited, the money was not the only thing hurt. His confidence was hurt. That was the real trigger. Because after a painful loss, many people do not simply want to make good financial decisions. They want to erase the feeling of being wrong. Ethan told himself he just needed to make it back. But recovery trading is rarely clean. Now, every decision carried emotional weight. A normal gain felt too small because it did not repair the damage fast enough. A normal loss felt personal because it made the hole deeper. Waiting felt impossible because doing nothing felt like accepting defeat. And this is where trading can keep a person poor even if they are intelligent. The problem is not that they never study. The problem is that the market eventually stops testing their knowledge and starts testing their identity. Ethan still believed he was being rational. He read more, watched more, tracked more, adjusted more. But underneath all of it, he was no longer asking, "Is this a good decision?" He was asking, "Can this get me back?" That question is dangerous. Because once your goal is to get back what you lost, the market is no longer a place where you allocate capital. It becomes a place where you negotiate with regret. Meanwhile, Daniel was doing almost nothing interesting. Daniel was around Ethan's age. He also had money saved. He also cared about building wealth, but he did not want his financial future to depend on his ability to make the right decision every day. So Daniel chose the boring path. He invested consistently. He kept his expenses under control. He stayed diversified. He did not check his account 5 times a day. He did not have dramatic wins to talk about. He did not feel like a genius when the market went up. That is one reason the trading trap is so convincing. In the early stage, the trader often looks more serious than the investor. The trader has more vocabulary, more opinions, more urgency, and more market awareness. The long-term investor can look almost lazy by comparison. But wealth is not impressed by activity. Wealth responds to behavior that can survive time. After 1 year, the difference was not obvious yet. Ethan had wins and losses. Some months looked good. Some looked frustrating. He had learned a lot, but learning had come with a cost. 1 month, Ethan made almost $900 trading. He felt like the system was finally working. But by the end of the quarter, 1 bad position, 2 emotional exits, and the taxes on short-term gains had eaten most of it. What stayed with him was not the profit. It was the stress he had paid to feel temporarily ahead. Daniel's life was quieter. His account moved too, sometimes up, sometimes down. But Daniel did not treat every movement like a personal test. He had built a system that did not require his emotions every morning. That difference became more important over time. By year 3, Ethan knew much more about trading than when he started, but his wealth had not grown the way he imagined. He had experienced enough wins to keep believing the next improvement might change everything, but he had also experienced enough losses to keep needing recovery. That is a hard place to escape, because intermittent wins are powerful. If trading only punished Ethan, he might have stopped earlier, but it did not. It rewarded him just often enough to keep the story alive. Every win said, "See, you can do this." Every loss said, "You just need to get better." So he stayed in the loop. Daniel had not become impressive overnight, but his system was working in the background. He was not trying to force a result every week. He was giving time a chance to do what Ethan kept interrupting. And this is the part most people miss. The opposite of trading is not doing nothing. The opposite of trading is building a system where your money does not require constant emotional supervision. Long-term investing can feel passive, but it is not careless. It requires discipline. It requires patience. It requires the ability to watch boring progress and not sabotage it because someone online appears to be moving faster. That ability is rare. Ethan did not lack effort. He had too much effort pointed in the wrong direction. He spent hours trying to improve entries and exits, but he spent less time asking whether this behavior was actually helping him become wealthy. He measured progress by how much he learned, how many trades he took, how many hours he watched, and how many patterns he recognized. But none of those things automatically equal wealth. This is the money logic of the story. The real question is not, can trading make money? Of course, some people can trade successfully. Some professionals have systems, risk controls, experience, and emotional discipline that most ordinary people do not have. Trading is not automatically fake, and it is not always foolish. But that was never the question Ethan needed to ask. The better question was, is trading helping me build wealth better than a simpler system I can actually stick with for decades? That question changes everything. Because wealth is not built only by finding opportunities. It is also built by avoiding unnecessary errors, staying in the game, letting compounding work, and keeping taxes, costs, stress, and emotional mistakes from quietly eating the result. Imagine two people both start with the same savings. One is constantly moving in and out, sometimes winning, sometimes losing, paying costs, triggering taxes depending on the situation, and making decisions under pressure. The other invests regularly, stays diversified, and does not try to turn every week into a performance test. By year 5, Ethan began to feel the weight of what trading had taken. He had not become poor in one dramatic moment. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, the damage was spread across time. A little money lost here, a little tax drag there, a few bad decisions after a stressful day. A few missed contributions because cash was waiting for a better trade. A few months where he was too emotionally exhausted to think clearly about his broader financial life. And slowly, the dream of getting ahead became another form of being stuck. The painful part was not that Ethan lost a few trades. The painful part was that Daniel's boring money had been quietly building a future, while Ethan's money had been trapped in a loop of proving, repairing, and starting over. Daniel did not have Ethan's excitement. But he had something Ethan underestimated: consistency. He did not need to win today to feel okay about his future. He did not need the market to prove his intelligence. He did not need every dollar to be in motion. His money had room to breathe. Ethan's money never did. That is the hidden difference between trading and investing for many ordinary people. Trading often makes you feel like your money is alive because something is always happening. Investing often feels dead because nothing dramatic happens for long stretches of time. But wealth often grows in the quiet part. Ethan eventually saw the truth, but not all at once. It came slowly. He looked back and realized he had spent years trying to beat the market, but he had never built the habits that make wealth easier to keep. He had become better at watching price movement, but worse at letting money sit. He had become more informed, but less peaceful. He had become more active, but not necessarily richer. That was the uncomfortable part. Because Ethan had not been lazy, he had tried hard. And sometimes trying hard is what makes the mistake harder to admit. If you lose money because you were careless, the lesson is obvious. But if you lose ground while studying, tracking, learning, and working, the truth feels more painful. You have to admit that effort alone was not enough. The system mattered, the behavior mattered, the time horizon mattered, and the ability to avoid unnecessary action mattered more than he wanted to believe. This does not mean every person should avoid every form of trading forever. It does not mean long-term investing is risk-free. It does not mean one strategy fits every person. But it does mean this: if trading is constantly pulling your attention, disturbing your sleep, changing your mood, triggering emotional decisions, and making long-term investing feel boring or weak, then trading may be costing you more than your account statement shows. It may be training you to become the wrong kind of money person. Someone who needs action to feel safe. Someone who needs movement to feel progress. Someone who cannot let time do its work because waiting feels like losing. That was Ethan's real loss. The real loss was the investor he never became while trying to feel like a trader. Daniel's path was not perfect. He still faced market downturns. He still had uncertainty. He still needed discipline. But his strategy did not require him to be brilliant every morning. It required him to be consistent for a long time. That difference sounds small. It is not. A financial system that depends on your daily emotional perfection is fragile. A system that allows you to be human is much stronger. And that is why trading keeps so many people poor. Not because they are stupid, not because they are lazy, not because they never had ambition, but because trading can take a good ambition and attach it to the wrong scoreboard. It makes you count activity. It makes you count wins. It makes you count predictions. It makes you count how much you know. But wealth counts what remains after time. Costs, mistakes, taxes, emotions, and opportunity cost have all taken their share. That is the scoreboard Ethan ignored. And by the time he understood it, the lesson was no longer about trading. It was about becoming the kind of person who could let money work without needing the market to entertain him every day. So before you assume trading is the serious path and long-term investing is the boring path, ask a harder question. Is this actually building wealth? Or is it just giving you the feeling that you are doing something? Because those are not the same thing. Sometimes the reason your money never grows is not because you ignored it. It is because you kept interrupting it every time patience started to work. Be honest. Did trading ever make you feel productive while your wealth stayed almost the same? Comment below, because this is where many people start to see their own money habits differently. And if this story helped you think about wealth in a clearer way, like the video, and subscribe to Money Logic for more stories about the hidden decisions that shape your financial future. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It reflects general financial ideas and personal perspective, not personal financial advice. Always do your own research and consider speaking with a qualified financial professional before making major financial decisions.